Hi, this is for everyone who's struggling. I've struggled many times in my life. When I was a little boy, I was fairly popular in my neighborhood. I was the oldest of a group of kids, mostly boys, who played together. There were a lot of them because there were several Catholic families in my neighborhood. And I had a great time. But then middle school came along, and with them, my bullies increased from just a couple. One of whom was my neighbor and best friend, ironically, to several. I struggled through middle school, and then in the 8th grade, I started to take a stand for myself. Unfortunately, that stand caused me to harden myself in a way that had unfortunate negative effects. Around the same time, my parents separated and later divorced. And an old friend of mine whom I'd gone to grade school with and didn't know was in my middle school, one day threw a book and hit me in the head with it. And I still don't know why. Maybe David will tell me. I had poor self-image, poor self-esteem, poor confidence. I thought I was ugly. I thought nobody liked me, really. I mean, some of my closest friends from 6th grade evaporated by 8th grade. And I felt pretty lonely. But once I got into high school, I slowly started to improve. Yet, by senior year, I was struggling horribly with depression brought on by my parents' divorce, the subsequent fighting, problems with my quest for an understanding of God, because of a lot of pressure that was put on me by family members. Wow, didn't think it was going to make me want to tear up. And there were some other things as well. I was still being bullied, but not as badly. The bullying continued into university, actually. But, I kept on growing as a person, because one thing I figured out when I was young was that it's important to grow as a person. So I started doing a lot of studying. I learned about psychology, I learned about parenting, I learned about having a love relationship. I gained some confidence in my careers. I bounced from job to job, sometimes, if I don't like where I'm working, I'll leave. If my boss is a real jerk, I'll leave. If I get really bored because there's no challenges, I leave. But what I noticed was departing from one job, either voluntarily or because of a layoff, which happened to me more than once, allowed me to get a better job. So it turned out to be okay, actually. And, but yeah, I had some car accidents, lost my vehicle, finished university, but was unable to get a job as a programmer because I didn't have a vehicle to get to the job that I was offered, and the depression was just dragging me down in a major, major way. I think I hit highs and lows simultaneously in university. I actually I actually had love relationships that were not quite so insane, and as in high school, and um, did some growing up while living in a dorm, and and yet my dad's remarriage also had an impact on my depression because of various things that were going on, such as the rivalry between my sister and stepsister that eventually caused my sister to leave, and also caused a great deal of trouble for me because my stepsister wasn't very nice. She was she was a snake in the grass, really. Um, Eventually, I got myself kicked out of the house, which was really my own fault. Um, but I still struggled with my depression, and I had revealed it to my dad in senior year of high school, but he didn't really get it. He'd never been depressed. So I didn't really necessarily get all the support I needed to cope with it. But you know what? I'm still here, aren't I? And that should be a sign to you. You know, they say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but that's not entirely true. Something can destroy you without killing you. And you see those people living on the streets or becoming addicts because they can't face the reality that is their life, or otherwise, messing up. And it's not necessarily true that the adversities and challenges of your life are going to make you stronger or kill you. They can just leave you in that gray land in between until you dig yourself out. It was a combination of factors that helped me to get out of depression. I was getting some therapy. I was put on nortriptyline, which was an antidepressant. Not saying that it'll be right for you, but it helped me. It gave me enough time to see what I was supposed to be like without medication so that I could develop defenses against depression. In addition to that fact, I was learning to like myself, which was a matter of undoing the brainwashing caused by the bullying, which admittedly it was partially my own fault because I took the mean words of the bullies too seriously. I forgot to balance them out and negate them with all the people who either didn't bother me or who were my friends. I gave it too much weight, in other words. So if you're being bullied, don't give it too much weight. Just because a small number of people are actively being mean to you doesn't mean the rest of the world hates you. It doesn't mean that you're a terrible person. And you need to focus on those people who are being nice to you. And notice how many people are actually leaving you alone. And I resolved my inner struggle over religion. And a few other things, including discovering that I had a knack for moving up in jobs. But life is a roller coaster. There are times when, especially toward the end of my depression, when I was just so miserable, I ended up, after I lost my job, I ended up using my credit cards to pay for my bills. I got a job for a while at a fish store for 2.5 years through the kindness of a guy who was on my bulletin board system, which was a precursor to the internet, really. And that was a really fun job until I discovered that the aquatic pet trade, most people just didn't really care about their aquatic pets. And got another job after that. But for a while there, before that job at the aquatic pet store called Aquatics Unlimited, and by the way, Jim, if you're watching this, Thank you very much. You saved me. For a while there, I was really, really struggling. I came out about it to my family at a family reunion at my uncle's house. My uncle, I think he really didn't understand, maybe, about depression so much. He said anytime I needed to talk, I could call Collect and talk to him. If you've ever been depressed, you know that a person who is depressed enough isn't going to reach out for help. They need you to reach out to them. And my uncle didn't know that, so he didn't reach out to me. And by the time I was actually ready to reach out to him, he was dead. He had a massive heart attack, I guess it was. And that was really hard, because I loved him a lot. I had some great years after that. I had moved to the near south side of Milwaukee, and I had a fantastic group of friends I hung out with. There were Mike and Becky and Dodie and Vince and a few others, and we regularly got together and really had a good time together. And I would have to say that I think it was the year of 1996 was one of the best years of my life. And that was also the year that I learned that drinking a lot of soda is really a bad idea. And I cut way, way back. Because I went over to Dodie's one night and I had so many sodas that I ended up having acid stomach all night and had to keep on drinking a bunch of baking soda and water to quell it. It was horrible tasting. But it was all that was available at Dodie's house, and it was the middle of the night, so I didn't want to walk over to my house to get some antacids. And there was the time when my dad had to have major open heart surgery, and my friend Mike supported me. But 96 was a really good year, thanks to those people. So Dodie, Mike, Vince, Gary, no, not Gary, he was a jerk, but Tim, Becky, you guys really made that a special year for me, so thank you. And I even had a roommate named Dee. She had 3 kids, and I remember them, although I can't remember all 3 names. There was Amber and Johnny, and then there was another older girl who's, I can't remember her name, but they lived without me for a while. They had one part of the flat, and I had the other part, and we shared, the kitchen and one of the bathrooms and stuff, and that was okay. And then I got involved with a woman in Denver, and I really decided the best way to prove how I felt about her was to move to Denver. So I moved, and it didn't work out, but that was okay. It didn't work out, but I had friends, and I had a new shot at life, and some of the things about my life in Milwaukee were holding me back, and being in Denver allowed me to advance. I had read books like The Power of Positive Thinking and The Magic of Thinking Big and The Greatest Salesman in the World and stuff like that. And I had read books on psychology about relationships and things, and I had all this new understanding of what was holding me back. So, for example, while I was reading the Magic of Thinking Big, I think it's called, the author was talking about how our mindset affects the way we perceive things, and I was like, okay, let's prove that. So up until that point, I had always pretty much hated mornings. I didn't know that until many, many years later, but I had sleep apnea, and for a while I had insomnia, but I eventually conquered the insomnia. So I would sleep for a long time. I would stay up late, and then I would sleep for a long time, and I would be tired during the day. I'd fall asleep at work and while typing and things like that. And I decided I would test it on my hatred of mornings. Because before this, if somebody said good morning to me, I'd say, yeah, it's a morning, or something like that. Was not exactly enthusiastic about mornings. So I committed myself for the next few days to waking up and being deliberately cheerful about it being morning, just to see what would happen. Thought, what's the worst that can happen? I'll be proved right, yeah? Well, the first morning, I got up, I smiled, I said good morning to everybody with enthusiasm, and I liked it. I really liked it. It felt good. And I was sold. And throughout my life, that simple experience has helped me again and again and again to have a better life. By realizing that I needed to focus more on positive things than negative things, which was another critical mental change I had to make. I changed my life in major ways. I became less and less depressed. I became less and less negative and whiny. Now, granted, it took time to change these habits, because when you have a habit, it's not just something that you intellectually choose. It's something that is wired into your brain, into the neural pathways, and those pathways become stronger the more you do that thing. So it took quite a bit of time, years. I also learned to overcome my phobias. I had 4 phobias. The first one I overcame was a fear of darkness, which I did kind of out of self-defense, because my parents would put me into situations where if I wanted something, I had to go where it was dark and scary, which was, the scary part was anywhere that was dark was scary to me. So if I had to go downstairs in the middle of the night, I would do it. And if I could show you how hilarious it was, I would. But I don't have anybody to hold the camera for me. But it was pretty funny if you could have watched. You would have laughed your butt off. So that was the first one. The second one was I overcame my fear of peeing in public places. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about peeing inappropriately. I'm talking about using a urinal. But because of what had happened to me at Mayfair Mall at the ice skating rink, in the bathroom one day, where some other boys were trying to ogle me, I couldn't pee in a public place for many, many years. But I got over that. And then the third one that I finally defeated over time was my fear of heights. But before that, I at least partially defeated my social anxiety, which was really hurting me, because it didn't affect me only with strangers, but even affected me with my close family. And finally, just a few years ago, I took the final steps to defeat my fear of needles, which stemmed from an incident as a child in which the doctors decided they needed to have bone marrow to test, and they took 2 of those vials of bone marrow out of my butt bone, my pelvic bone, which was excruciatingly painful and completely erased all of my efforts prior to that to not be afraid of needles. I'd gotten to the point where injections and blood draws didn't affect me at all. Well, 2016 was the year I defeated my last phobia. I don't have any more phobias. Can I still be freaked out by things? Probably, yeah. But I don't have any unreasonable fears anymore that I can think of anyways. 4 phobias. Plus social anxiety. And most of the time, my depression doesn't bother me. Now, after I lost my job at Generations Against Bullying, which is a story unto itself, I sunk back into depression. But to be fair, I just lost my wife in 2017 and had been depressed after that. So it was, down. Yeah, I 2.5 years of trying to help my wife survive cancer. Whoo, man! And when she died, boom! I hit bottom, but I had my kids, so that kind of kept me going. And I got on medication, and I went back up. I was at GAB, so I didn't need my medicine anymore. And then I lost my job there, and I went boom. And that was hard. I got on medication again. And then after several months, I was okay. Was back on an even keel again. But I've struggled with depression off and on through my life. But I've learned techniques. Like when I start feeling sad, I fight it. I don't sink into it. I stay afloat. If it lasts more than a short time, then I start to consider, is this the start of another episode of depression? Do I need to go back on medication? And if after a couple of days have passed, it hasn't stopped, then I do go back on medication for a while, just to get myself back on an even keel. I've been poor to the point where I had to go to food pantries, I should say, and get help from the government. I'm currently on food stamps. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. They've temporarily at least discontinued my food stamps. So I'm on Medicaid, though, and I've been on food stamps and Medicaid since 2017, and this is 2020. So it's been close to 3 years. Almost the entire time that I've been in the U.S. since I returned here in April of 2017. But I have done really well in some respects. Most of my life revolves around my kids. But when I was in Milwaukee, I had a job placement through Wisconsin Works at Feeding America, which was great. I was doing really well. I had impressed the volunteer supervisor. I had impressed his boss to the point that when they were busy, they would let me supervise all the volunteers. Now, when I say volunteers, I mean people who were placed there by various programs like FSET and Wisconsin Works and Job Corps and some of these other things. A lot of people didn't really want to be there, so there was a great deal of laziness and grumbling and stuff like that. But I tried to get them to understand that they should be grateful for what they were getting, and I tried to help out my bosses when I could. And then I left that and at a very fortuitous time to pursue a training program in website development, which was supposed to be for a year, but then they cut me off at 6 months. So I never actually got to finish that, and I didn't really feel that I was any longer intellectually able, because of memory problems, to pursue that to completion. But then I got into GAB, Generations Against Bullying, and I did really well. I ended up becoming the office manager, and then lost that job, and I spent 6 months trying to find a remote job. If I had known at the start how hard it is to get a remote job, how fierce the competition is nationally and internationally, I probably would have gotten a regular job first, but I didn't know. And that was a struggle. I used up most of my savings to get through that time. And then I got a good job temporarily before moving to Ohio. But you know what? That's beside the point. The point here is that I can't understand every situation that you may have gone through. You may have been struggling with drug addiction, and I can intellectually understand that, and I empathize with you, but I've never been a drug addict. I've been addicted to, and am still addicted to video games and television, although I like to imagine that it's somewhat under control. But I've never been addicted to drugs or alcohol or anything like that, or cigarettes or whatever. I've never been in the gang world. I've never even done drugs. I've never been in the criminal world either. I mean, I've been a pretty clean-cut guy. Sure, I've done some things that probably could have gotten me in trouble if I would have been caught, but I've never done anything that was like hurting people or anything like that, or threatening people. I've tried to be a good person. Now, that said, just because you're trying to be a good person doesn't mean you're always a good person. And just because you're doing bad things doesn't make you a bad person. And even a bad person can reform themselves if they so choose. There's no such thing as going so far that you can't come back if you choose to come back. You can still become a good person again. Yes, there will be challenges. Yes, there will be resistance. Yes, people will not trust you. Yes, the police will not trust you. But through consistent effort over time, there are sufficient examples out there of people who've done this, who've turned their lives around, who've become good people, that I am sure you can too. But it ultimately boils down to mindset. It ultimately boils down to you make a commitment and you stick to it. No matter how many times you fall down, you get back up again. No matter how many mistakes you make, you try again. No matter what you do, you keep on going. Instead of punishing yourself for what you've done wrong, that guilt is a message to let you know you've made a mistake. It's not supposed to be something you carry on your shoulders all the time. It's a warning to say, hey, you're screwing up. Learn the lesson. Move forward with your life. Change yourself. That's what guilt is for. Don't obsess too much about the past. Don't obsess too much about the future. Yes, definitely learn from the past so you can make better plans for the future. And yes, of course, you're going to do plans for the future so that you can achieve your destiny that you want for yourself. Not your fate. We don't have control over fate, but your destiny is in your hands. And one key way to achieve your destiny is to make sure you have a positive mindset. Don't forget that. Positive mindset is absolutely critical. Now, that doesn't mean you are going to be unrealistic about things, okay? You do have to be somewhat realistic. You can't set goals for yourself that are completely unachievable. Becoming Spider-Man just is not going to happen. Okay? I don't care what people tell you. We are not technologically at the point where you can turn yourself into a superhero. But you can turn yourself into a super great person. Make the right choices. Identify when you're doing things that are hurting you. Are you engaging in activities that temporarily make you feel good but are actually hurting you, like drugs or sex or something like that? Stop doing that. It's not going to make a difference in your life. However, when you start engaging in positive mindset, when you start engaging in doing things that make you feel better about yourself instead of making you hate yourself and make other people hate you, that's when your life will get better. If that means you need religion, then you get religion. But remember, ultimately, it's not down to what God is putting into your spirit. It's not down to what the prophet or leader of that religion is putting into your head. It's down to you changing your attitude, you changing your behavior, you turning over a new leaf through grit, through sheer perseverance, through understanding that one failure is just that. And it's a stepping stone to success. If you look at the histories of great people, people who who've become icons like Walt Disney, Thomas Edison, Tesla, and so on and so forth, you'll see that they failed time and time and time again. They were resented, they were resisted, and yet they rose to become giants. Now, maybe it isn't your destiny to become a legend, a famous person. Maybe you just want to work quietly in the background, and that's okay. Fame isn't for everybody, and it certainly has its burdens. All you got to do is look at the paparazzi, and you can see that. But you can choose your destiny as long as you don't give up. Never give up. Keep on pursuing a better life. And remember, when you're trying to improve yourself, keep in mind that changing yourself is something you do for yourself. Learn. Learn to grow as a person. Learn new things. Learn new skills. And develop yourself into a better person, step by step, day by day, minute by minute, if necessary. And over time, you will find that you're improving. It took me a long time to get to where I'm at. I went from somebody with very poor self-esteem, and now I've got good self-esteem. I've learned a lot of stuff about many different areas, and you should too. Because if you're not learning, if you're not growing as a person, you're basically a zombie, just kind of walking through the mist of your life with no focus, no real direction, sitting in front of the TV, sucking down a beer, or whatever it is you're doing. You're throwing away your life. So get out there and make a difference for yourself. And by making a difference for yourself, you are most likely going to make a difference for others. Because one of the things I've found that really helps is to doing good things for other people. So I hope you'll give this some thought. I hope that you'll work on changing your mindset. And as a consequence, changing the way you live your life, learning new things, learning new skills, and becoming a better person. Because I guarantee you, unless you're so out of touch with your emotions that you can't recognize the benefits like a psychopath, you will be happy with what happens. Take the right path. As I tell my children, make good choices and give love. Thank you for listening. I hope that you'll leave some comments or something for me below. Have a wonderful day, if you don't mind. It's okay.